Greetings and welcome for another Catechism Moment. This one's going to be on confession. What is confession, especially to us Lutherans? It's a good question because there's so many different ways to approach it. But I want to give you a little bit of knowledge of what I experienced as a child growing up and what I also encountered in Luther's small catechism within the Book of Concord. And when I grew up in confirmation, I didn't realize how there was some misunderstanding that was being taught to me about confession in the confirmation programs. It was quite obvious that all I had to do was go directly to God, confess my sin, and then God absolves it. While that is true, Luther just didn't throw out individual confession like it sounds like that, or like we've maybe heard from some people. But also, Luther did not keep individual confession as a sacrament because he felt everything that happened within confession can be covered by the other two sacraments. Actually, what is interesting is how he wrote in the small catechism a form of individual confession. I'll give you a part of it just so you can hear how it sounds. And it starts like this: Proceed. I, a poor sinner, confess myself before God, guilty of all sins. Especially I confess before you that I am a manservant, a maidservant, or etc. But alas, I serve my master unfaithfully. For in this and in that I have not done what they have commanded me. I have provoked them and caused them to curse. They have been negligent in many things, and permitted damage to be done. Have also been immodest in words and deeds, and have quarreled with my equals, have grumbled and sworn at my mistress, etc. For this I am sorry and pray for grace. I want to do better. And what happens after that is there's a time where the person receives absolution from another person. It isn't just, I absolved with God. I have now confessed not only my sins to God, but to another person and looking for absolution. And this is straight out of the small catechism in the Book of Concord. Have you ever thought how important confession may be for you? To share not only with God, but with another person what we have done wrong, and maybe even asking advice from that other person. How do we make amends? How do we do better? So that we can learn in this. The grace grows when we admit our fault and allow God to teach us how not to do it again. Well, that is an example of confession. Part of confession also allows us to ponder and ask for ways to change our lives. A life filled with God's grace is about forgiveness, but it's also about God transforming our lives in that forgiveness. And Luther gives a short breakdown in what we have in the small catechism that we have here. And the breakdown is something like this. What happens? We confess our sins and we receive forgiveness for our sins. What sins do we confess? Well, we confess the ones we're aware of and the ones we're not aware of. If we're aware of them, we tell people, or we tell, I'm sorry I made these sins, God, can you help me do better? Or you tell the confessor. And that allows us to be humble. If we're not aware of it, we confess and say, God, can you help us see what we're unaware of? And we especially confess the sins that trouble us, that keep coming back in our minds. And how do we identify these sins? It's a very simple thing. We ponder the Lord's Prayer, we ponder the Ten Commandments, and we ponder how we have fallen short and how we need God's grace to make an amends not only to God, but to also others. So this week's challenge is going to be simple. Every day this week, ask God to humble you one way, big or small. A way to see how we truly need God's grace in our daily lives.